Welcome everyone to our community forum for the Mindess Building Committee project. My name is Paul Kendall, I'm the chair. First, I would like to just read a quick statement. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are utilizing the Zoom platform to conduct our meeting, and all committee members are participating remotely. The goal is to maintain the spirit of the open meeting law, providing access and transparency of all proceedings. When appropriate, efforts will be made to allow for public participation through the Zoom platform, and your patience with any technical difficulties appreciated. Everyone will be coming into the meeting muted. Only the committee members and active participants will be allowed to unmute themselves. At some point, at the appropriate times, we will allow for public participation. I'll give more instructions at that time, but we'll only be accepting that through Zoom. So those that are either on via the app, either on a computer or their cell phone, or dialed in. So, the first thing we're going to do is we also do everything via roll call in this virtual setup. So I'm just going to take a roll call vote. Let's see, make sure I haven't missed making anybody co-host here. 1 second. Claudia's not.
I think you got them all.
I think that's it, right?
Yep, yep.
So I'm just going to do a roll call. Paul Kendall here. James Adams.
Here.
Michael Herbert.
Here.
Yolanda Greaves.
Here, but I'll only be on until 7, Paul.
Okay. Yeah, just let us know when you leave or you
Okay.
Barbara Durand on. I didn't see her. Paul Vieira.
Here.
Paul Carpenter. I did not see him in the list. Joe Richardson. I did not see him in the list either. Michael Kyra.
Here.
Claudia Bennett.
Here.
Melissa Mercon Smith.
Here.
Ed Hart.
Here.
Chris Lee. I didn't see him before. Let me just make sure he can come on. Nope. Okay. Nick Giovanni.
Here.
Keaton Joshi.
Here.
Let's see. Is Tawak on? Oh,
Yep,
there you go.
I am.
And you changed your name. Thank you very much. Tim McKay. I did not see him before. Nope. And Michael King.
Yeah.
All right. We have 13 members present, 10 voting members. So we will officially be calling to order now. Let me just bring up the agenda. Apologize. The order of business tonight is we've just gone through opening the opening remarks. Then we're going to be going into a presentation by the project team to give everybody an idea of what we're going to be going through at our March 31st building committee meeting. The school building committee made its recommendation of the design option that they want to put forward for consideration to the school committees, select board, and the community as a whole. So the project team has put together a presentation that outlines the current status of the project, the recommended option, and then also it also shows an option at the middle school as well, just to give some kind of comparison of the different things. Once we go through that presentation, we'll open it up for feedback and questions from the community. So looks like we do have quite a number of people on. So If you would like to, in general, I won't be having public participation during the presentation, but if you do want to ask a question, you can use the raise your hand feature within Zoom. And if there's an appropriate time to pause, we can potentially do that. Otherwise, we'll save the public participation and comments and questions to the end of the presentation. So, does that sound good to all the committee members? Okay, the silence is affirmative. So Kent, Kent or Bill, do you want to bring up the presentation?
Yep.
Great. So, so this is just the agenda for the presentation. It's pretty straightforward if you want to advance. We always start off with this slide here. This is the building committee members. They've put in just a lot of work to get to this point. This isn't just sitting down and coming up with a few options. It's been a pretty extensive process, and so I want to thank all the members for a lot of work over the last close to 2 years. So thank you very much. And this is our project team with, and I'll ask each of them as they present to introduce themselves, but our project management team from Compass and also our design team from Plansburg. So with that, I believe that you're up, Jeff.
Yep. So hi, my name is Jeff D'Amico. I'm the project executive from Compass Project Management. We're your owner's rep. I help guiding you through the process with the town process as well as the state process. This is our 5th community forum, so I won't recap all the acronyms, but just wanted to do a high level that this is a partnership with the Mass School Building Authority. They're involved both from a regulatory scope standpoint approval and from a cost funding partnership approval. They have a 3-stage process as part of the feasibility study. You completed the preliminary design plan back in the fall. We looked at a long list of options. We evaluated the existing sites at the middle school and at the Mindess site to get a good understanding of what you were working with in terms of existing conditions information. And the educators also developed the educational plan as part of a joint effort with the school administration and other parents and support that helped to influence the actual educational plan that was developed. We're currently in the 2nd stage of that process, which is the preferred schematic report. As Paul noted at the earlier intro, they've come to a recommendation solution from the building committee last week, and we're here to talk about that tonight. The next steps coming forward, we'll get to at the end of this, and you'll hear a little more about from me on schedule. But we're going to wrap this stage up with a submission in May and have the Mass School Building Authority approve your preferred option in June. And then we'll come back with a detailed schematic design set this fall, submitting that in September, and coming back ultimately for a town funding vote in November and December, where we could then move forward with detailed design. I'm going to let the design team talk. They're going to do the majority of tonight's presentation. Then you'll hear back from me again at the end when it comes to cost and next steps.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. This is Kent Kovacs. I'm the principal architect from Plansburg Architects. And what we want to do with the presentation tonight is walk you through the project considerations, the options that have been discussed over the past months, and kind of an overview of the feasibility study. I'll be joined by the project manager from Plansburg, Bill Beatrice, as well as our sustainability consultant, Ryan Montani from Green Engineers. And when we go into project consideration, there were 3 main variables that we studied. That was the bulk of the feasibility study. And this is our 5th community forum. So if you came to any of the others, you see that these topics were, highly discussed. And the first is the grade configurations. As part of this MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority building project, 2 grade configurations are studied: a 635 enrollment serving grades 3 to 5, and a larger grade configuration serving grade 2 through 5 for 845 students. And the school committee and school building committee agreed that the grades 3 to 5 configuration was the best choice. Also, there were 2 sites that were evaluated as part of the feasibility study, the existing Mindess site and the middle school site. And many options were explored at both sites. And the goal was leave no stone left unturned. We wanted to look at a code compliant option that's required by the MSBA at the Mindess. What would it take to bring that school up to code without any educational additions, no additional classrooms to meet state standards, just bringing the building up to code with the building systems. We looked at addition renovation options there, as well as new construction options at both the Mindess and the middle school site. And Bill Breaches will walk us through some of the challenges at both those sites. And then sustainability, we know how important this is to your community. And Ryan will walk us through this, but we had heavy focus at many of the community forums and school building committees on sustainability early on, because we want to understand what it means to the community to have a green building that's sustainable and efficient to operate. And Ryan's going to walk us through some of the takeaways during the study. And Ryan, I'll hand it off to you.
Sure. Hey, this is Ryan Montoni with the Green Engineer. I'm also presenting with Justin Dubois, who's a colleague of mine. So we understand that Ashland prefers a low energy building that can easily be transitioned to net zero, either now or in the future. So I quickly want to define what net zero is versus net zero ready. So net zero ready school is one that has the enhanced envelope, which means increased wall and window performance, and also utilizes very efficient mechanical systems that have a low EUI, somewhere in the 20s. And EUI is just a measurement of energy use per square foot, and we use this as a number to easily compare performance of buildings. And so a low EUI generally means a lower greenhouse gas and energy cost. The EUI of the option that we're typically looking at, option 2B, which we'll discuss briefly, has EUI of 26, which means we have to somehow offset the remaining EUI with renewable energy on site or by purchasing offsets, and that's most easily done with photovoltaics or solar panels. So essentially the lower the EUI, the smaller the PV will have to be. For option 2B, which we'll discuss, it's about 70,000 square feet. And we've identified area on the site, either on the roof or in the parking lot, that could potentially support this. So once enough PV is installed on site or we purchase the offsets required, the school can then be considered net zero. So we're designing the building to be net zero, but it might not be net zero ready until the PV is installed. We purchase the offsets. So I think Justin's going to review this one.
So the design is going to include several strategies to meet those energy performance goals. The first is the high performance envelope, which will exceed code by a significant margin. So we're looking at wall insulation as high as R40, roof insulation of R60, and triple glazed windows. And then on top of that, there will be exterior mounted sunshades to minimize the heat gain and to improve the use of daylighting by reducing solar glare as well. So the next strategy will be a highly efficient mechanical system. And there are 3 options under consideration at this point. The first is option 2 here. It's a ground source heat pump, and that's an all electric system. Option 2B is a hybrid system, which uses ground source heat pumps and then a supplemental cooling tower and natural gas boiler. And those would just be sized to meet the peak loads, where the ground source heat pumps would cover most of the load throughout the year and provide most of the heating and cooling. And then option 3 is more of a conventional system, and it's closer to what the systems will be compared against when we compare against the energy code. And that's a natural gas boiler to provide heating and a water-cooled chiller plant for cooling. So some of the summary results of life cycle cost analysis are shown here. We have the solar PV costs, the ground source heat pump costs where it's applicable, and then the total initial costs. The initial costs you can see include the solar costs, the ground source heat pump cost, the HVAC cost, and then the emergency generator cost, which is also higher for the electrical systems, for the all electric systems. And you can see that option 2 is the most expensive when it comes to initial costs. So the total equivalent annual cost is also an important number here. And that's the operating cost of the building combined with the annualized cost of the HVAC system initial costs. And then the site energy use intensity is also compared. But it's important to remember that the EUI will also change as the design progresses, and we'll have lots of options to influence that through decisions that are made further on in the design. You can go to the next slide. So a little bit more detail on option 2 and option 2B. Option 2 is all electric except for the emergency generator. We're estimating it at about 100 ground source, 100 heat pump wells, which would cover 70,000 square foot of site area, and that could be put under a parking lot or some other type of dual use area. And it requires a 750 kilowatt generator for backup power, and adds about 2.3 million to the project cost. So option 2B is the baseline for the cost estimations. Estimated to provide about 50% of the peak load for heating and cooling using the ground source heat pumps, but that system would also provide more than 80% of the annual load. So the supplemental systems would only really be used on the peak heating and cooling days, whereas the high efficiency system would be used most of the year. And that requires a much smaller backup generator.
All right, so really whether we do net zero ready, net zero now, or net zero ready, we're really designing the same building. This slide is just reiterating how we're gonna get to net zero. The option now is to add PV to the site, and you can see the increased cost there. It's significantly more per area for the parking lot canopy because of the structure that's needed to support it. So these are things that could be considered as the project moves forward.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. And this is Kent from Plansburg, and I just want to touch upon just these two kind of paths you see side by side. Is really we're talking about the additional photovoltaics that would bring you to that net zero. Just to summarize this slide, and now I just want to transition over to another important part of this, the educational plan. And Principal Cairo will walk us through the kind of timeline and the conversations that have taken place that brings us to today.
Yeah, sure. I know that we've discussed this on a number of different times, but just to review, obviously we've had many different discussions and many different conversations with folks, from small group meetings with the building committee to larger group conversations that included a number of folks from various community organizations and groups during our educational visioning meetings that were led by David Stephen and New Vista, who came in to help us organize these events. And through that, we were able to ultimately come up with the grade configuration. And we made that determination through a lot of thoughtful process. That was brought forward to the school committee, and ultimately we did decide, after looking at both the 2 through 5 configuration and the 3 through 5 configuration, that we're in the best interest of the Ashland Public Schools and the community at large to stick with the current 3 through 5 configuration, and that was voted on after a recommendation by the school committee. Not sure how much else there is to share about that. Happy to answer questions if there are any.
Yep, thank you very much. There'll be a part later where we'll go into a little bit more detail about the proposed building. And now Bill Beatrice is going to walk us through some of the site considerations and evaluations for the project.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Bill Beatrice from Plansburg. So as noted earlier, we did look at 2 different sites. We looked at the middle school and the Mindess site. So looking first at the middle school site, in general, it's a tight site, and we have some constraints with wetlands and buffer zones, but all in all, we do have a kind of a workable, buildable area, and you can see highlighted here in this slide in the orange area. So how does that logistically play out on a proposed construction on this site? If we just go to the next slide. So what we're proposing here, or one option would be to locate a new building on the existing ball field there. So this building would displace that ball field. Now, with any construction activity on an existing school site, that construction zone that you see that we've highlighted here would be fenced in and gated access, and access in and out of that site construction area would be limited just certain times during the day. We would, looking at the access to the site off Union Street, we would need to enlarge that that drive a bit, because we really want to separate traffic construction from school construction. So we'd have to widen that, fence those areas off a little bit. One of the challenges I would say to this site would be the long utility runs. And you can see the existing utilities in yellow on this slide here as they come off Union Street and feed into the existing middle school. So any new building in that far corner of the site adjacent to the football field, we'd have to continue those utilities over and around that football field into the new building. So, you know, some challenges there, but a workable site nonetheless. So looking at the Mindess site, very similar situation where we have some adjacent wetlands, some buffer zone, but this is a much bigger site and gives us a bigger buildable area that you can see highlighted in orange, similar to the middle school slide. Logistically, how does that work with a construction project? If we just advance that, we can take a look. You could just forward the slide.
Yep. Do you see it forward? It's, what do you see on your screen now, Bill?
Oh, I see it as still the oh, now I got it.
Yeah, it's forwarded, so you can keep on talking.
Okay, sorry. So again, we'd have the fenced off building zone kind of behind the existing middle school, Mindess school. You know, and again, it would be a fenced in area, gated, limited access time during school hours. Again, similar to the middle school site, we would want to enlarge or modify the entrance to the site off Concord Street to separate school traffic from construction traffic. This scenario here, we'd be building a new school behind the existing middle school, Mindess school, and then the Mindess school, once that's complete, the Mindess school would be demolished and taken down. So this is actually a two-phase construction scenario. And that second phase would involve, you know, the development of those play fields. So one of the nice things about this site is it is a bit larger than the middle school, and it does have that, give us that opportunity to develop more of the surrounding site for the school and town use.
Hey, Bill, sorry to interrupt. Just I meant to mention this at the beginning for anyone either watching on WACA or here that's listening. The presentation is already up on the website. So if you go to the Mindess Building Project website, which is also linked off of the Ashland Public Schools website, if you go to meeting materials in there, tonight's meeting materials are already posted. So if people want to be able to, on their own, look back at the different slides, they can do that as well.
Great, thanks. I think with this, I'll turn it over to Kent to walk us through some of the design alternatives to these sites.
Thank you, Bill. So we're going to kind of bring you down the feasibility study going back many months, starting with the middle school. So many options were explored at the middle school, and what we realized when doing this, we looked at both. Again, in the beginning of the study, we had the larger school of 845, and as well as the school enrollment of 635. So we tested many options, and we really had about 9 acres to kind of play with around that existing field. And the building honed into the kind of the northwest corner, where those baseball fields are now. And when planning this, we were forced to kind of a smaller footprint, and we even looked at 3-story options, and that was presented at I believe the last community forum, and I don't think it necessarily resonates well with anybody when looking at what the Mindess School can do. But here are a variety of different configurations, layouts studied, and the one that I think rose to the top was option 6A, and this was based on a 3-pod configuration, where you would have grades 3, 4, and 5 on the first level, and then it would be repeated on the second level. And we'll touch upon this because this ended up being the best layout for the academic wings that met the educational vision. And we'll just take a look at what this option looks like. Again, so some of our constraints, we have the MBTA access road to the north, the existing multi-purpose field, the tennis courts, and then topography. And that placed our building in that northwest corner. And we had new parking on the east side of the multi-purpose field and north side, as well as a dedicated bus drop-off and parent drop-off would loop around the entire building. And what was nice about this option was it can fit. We're kind of utilizing about 9 acres of site here. In the purple color shades represent the academic wings, and then in the kind of yellowish green shade that represents community use spaces such as the gymnasium, the cafeteria that has a stage component as part of it. And so we felt this is probably the best layout for the middle school option. And this is just an axonometric view, kind of illustrating how the massing might fit into that corner. And then a look at the floor plans. And this by no means is a finished building, but still a high level looking at the program that was considered. And then shifting to the Mindess site, here we had studied a variety of new construction options similar to the middle school with 635 student enrollments as well as the 845. But here we have the existing school, and part of the MSBA process is that you evaluate addition renovations, of which we had 2 primary options, option 4 and option 3. But again, many options were explored, and option 2D2, which was positioned slightly north of the existing Mindess, rose to the top. And this was the option that the school building committee is recommending as the preferred option. And it's a 2-story building, and some of the educational opportunities, there's through all the visioning sessions that the principal had walked us through in that timeline, there's a real understanding that there should be a great support for community spaces as well as educational spaces, that 3-pod configuration aligned with the educational plan, that it's an option that promotes student and teacher collaborative areas. And because there's more area at the Mindess site, there's more flexibility in designing the site, but also future growth and reconfiguration. So if there's ever an addition, there's more flexibility at the Mindess site. And another big benefit was because there's more room, we're able to kind of conveniently and secure access for community use spaces such as the gym, cafeteria, media center, and other spaces after hours and the weekends. And then with the building and site opportunities, it replaces the aged Mindess Elementary School. And again, there's a lot of site area. And so this project develops over 16 acres on that site between the school and site amenities. And there's a clear separation for bus drop-off from pickup parent drop-off. There's dedicated zones for that. There's new ball fields, larger playgrounds, and we're able to look at various options to support sustainability, such as Ryan described, photovoltaics in the parking lot, and our geothermal. So we have more flexibility with all the components that go into these projects. And so here's a look. Again, we're at a high level, and the building, if you can see, there's a red dashed line in the background, and that represents the existing Mindess School. This new school will be built behind it, kind of on the going into the edge of the wooded area. And this option also, from some others, did not disrupt or disturb that wooded area as much as some others. And so this is a good balance locating the building in that general area. And so you can see there's a dedicated bus drop off in front, and there you have a new main entry plaza highlighted in that teal color, is a new playground, new ball fields off to the west, and that community components of the caf and the gym highlighted in that kind of yellow green color. And then the academic wings are kind of off to the northeast. And on the right is the parent drop off and ample parking. We're targeting 250 parking spaces for this option. And now you'll notice that there is a loop kind of road around the entire site. And we're looking at that right now as for emergency vehicles only, and perhaps proposing some gates that are kind of illustrated in that blue color. And so when we talk about the difference between the Mindess and this site, there's a lot of flexibility at the middle school. Sorry, the middle school and the Mindess site. There's a lot more flexibility to develop what we heard during the educational visioning sessions and the community meetings in the past. This is just a quick massing of the two-story building. And then again, going into the floor plans based on a 3-pod configuration, and the next drawing will explain that in further detail. But this makes it very easy for during an after-school activity or a weekend activity to separate the academic wings for safety, security, just overall supervision from use of the gym, the cafeteria, or the media center. And this is a diagram as we get into a little more detail of the parts that go into this building. And what this represents is focus on the academic portion. And overall, there's 30 classrooms in this new building, general classrooms, as well as special education spaces that are highlighted in the orange. And so within the academic area, each grade would have 10 classrooms. And there would be a 3rd grade academic house, a 4th grade academic house, a 5th grade academic house on 2 levels. And what that allows is this vertical alignment with the same grades within the academic house, but also a unique opportunity around this common space for all 3 grades to kind of come together. And Principal Kyra, if you want to expand on the importance of that 5-pod configuration, it'd be a great opportunity.
Yeah, sure, happy to. So right now, we're obviously talking to our staff and working with our staff about a change in the way we present our instruction to provide our students with a more unified Mindess, which is a charge that was presented to us by the school committee. As we look to create this more unified programming, it would allow an opportunity for us to move into a pod style teaching, where we had the opportunity for 5 teachers in each grade level to be working together horizontally or across grade levels, but also now working vertically with grade level teams. So you could partner up the 3rd grade team with the 4th grade team and with the 5th grade team, which would present opportunities for what is best in our school right now, specifically with the area of authentic mentoring opportunities and creating relationships with teachers and children for a 3-year period, while also offering the opportunity for flexible skill-based grouping within that smaller single graded component. So if we were able to do such a thing with these pods, as you can picture it, you could see that the bottom level could have a 3rd grade pod, a 4th grade pod, and a 5th grade pod. The pods could work together vertically, 3, 4, 5, and then the 3, 4, and 5th grade teams could work together across 5 classrooms. Also, you would still have opportunity for the entire 3rd grade to work together, as they would be just separated by a stairwell. So that 3rd grade academic house would be able to make sure that they could still have access to one another for collaboration. The common spaces would be wonderful opportunities for our teachers to work together and collaborate with all the kids, regardless of how we were doing things, whether or not we were doing some vertical collaboration or some horizontal collaboration.
Great, thank you very much. And so you can see this is just the beginning of kind of exploring possibilities here, and it's very exciting. And now that there's a recommended option, we're going to begin exploring more of these opportunities. And so thank you very much. And so now we're going to shift over to the cost estimates for the project, and I just want to lead into overall scope and a summary. So with the grades 3 through 5 configuration, the building's approximately 105,000 gross square feet. The project also consists of demolishing the existing Mindess school at slightly over 100,000 gross square feet. And as I said earlier, because you're at a larger site, there's more flexibility for development. It's approximately 16.6 acres on the site. And that's something that'll get flushed out as the project's refined. And as one of the important factors, again, is sustainability. And so we've built into this base cost what it takes to be net zero ready. And I just kind of, you have the slides, you can see the presentation, but the site scope, it's a bigger site. So we have, stormwater management systems. We have to make sure that the soils are proper for the new school and preparation, the new ball fields, play areas, the parking, the bus loops, the lighting, vehicle charging stations. And again, we are going into the wooded area a bit. So there's a good allowance for trees and plantings as far as developing at the Mindess site. And then when we get into the building, there's the Massachusetts School Building Authority has a space template that's a recommendation, but they want each district to make it their own. And so they provide a gymnasium that's 6,000 square feet. And what we've found in the past is it's very difficult for the day-to-day activity to happen within that gymnasium, especially after hours, supporting after school functions as well as different community uses. And 6,000 is a lot, and is very tight to accommodate those activities. And so an additional 2,000 square feet of gym space is on this template, and that matches what you currently have. And so this project's kind of going back to the MSBA and saying it has 8,000 square feet because that's what we currently have. And it provides the space that will satisfy the activities that you're doing within there. Also, it has the option 2B with the geothermal, the backup generator, LED fixtures throughout, the super insulated envelope and roof, as well as miscellaneous building components such as built-in cubbies within the classroom, not metal lockers in the hallway, allowances for premiums for flooring, skylights, speech reinforcement. So we've put in a lot of pieces in here. And of course, every building is going to be code compliant, ADA accessible. And we just want to capture some of the main highlights that typically come up during conversations of what's in the building. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff D'Amico from Compass to walk us through the cost estimates comparison.
Great, thanks, Kent. So as Kent alluded to, it's an iterative process that we took it from conceptual. We've started to add a lot more layers of information and shaping the building as it lands on the site. And all that information gets pushed through to these conceptual cost estimates. But we're not done with the total design work. There'll still be another phase after this summer where we do schematic and drill down at a more finite level. But where we are and what we're presenting today is the conceptual cost estimates, which is an important metric to compare all the options together as with all the information we know to date. The MSBA, as I noted earlier, is a funding partner on the process and also has stipulations as part of their program. Some of those stipulations are that you must look at what the code renovation is. So essentially, you have an existing building. What does it take to bring it up to current codes and not satisfy your ed program and not add new site work or things of that nature? That cost is shown in gray as the $51.9 million number. Other items that were reviewed earlier as part of the building committee and then taken off the list were addition renovation options at the Mindess site. which also is that $81.5 million number. The other gray line item there is the option that it looked at a 4-grade configuration of 845 students on the Mindess site. That total project cost came in about $96.1 million. The columns, as you see them here, construction costs are the detailed estimates that both Compass and Flansburgh put together as 2 separate estimates that we reconciled. The soft cost multiplier is 25%, which is a standard school multiplier in projects of this size. And then those added together equal the total project cost. The building committee focused a lot of their efforts on the new options at both the Mindess and the middle school site. As Kent noted earlier, there were many options studied at both sites, but these 2 rose to the top to meeting most of the criteria established. The total cost of the Mindess school option is $84.1 million, where the middle school option was $78. But I wanted to highlight a few of the main differences what's driving that delta in cost. As Ken alluded to earlier, the site at Mindess is a lot larger, and that comes with cost, but it also comes with a lot of opportunities. So some of those opportunities were that we were able to replicate the 2 existing baseball fields and have sufficient parking and circulation around the site at a more optimal level, where the middle school site, being only under 10 acres available to us, had limited tighter circulation and parking requirements, and actually was a net loss in total baseball fields, where there was no net loss in the Mindess. The other significant cost driver differentiating the 2 is that on the Mindess side we would be abating and demolishing that building, whereas those costs and the opportunity costs of maintaining and keeping the existing building going are not reflected in the middle school site because that would be an asset turned over to the town to deal with. So the ultimate driver, those 3 main things kind of make up the difference between the $6 million between the 2 options. The building committee evaluated all the criteria that came to date and came to the conclusion that option 2D2 was the preferred option they want to recommend and bring back to the other boards in town to approve before moving forward to the MSBA. And I'll talk about what those schedule impacts are now. Next slide. So from a big picture zoom out standpoint, we'll be entering schematic design after we make this submission, and that'll bring us through the summer and into the fall. In September, we'll wrap up the final schematic design. At that point, the building committee and other boards in town have decided this is the final scope, size, and cost of the building that I want to ask the taxpayers to vote for and ask the state to approve. Through the fall, it'll go in front of the Mass School Building Authority for their approval, and then in front of the town for a town meeting approval as well as a ballot approval. Once that's all completed, the project would then kick into full design in January timeframe, moving forward through design development, permitting, and construction documents. We'd look forward to break ground in the early winter, so December-ish of 2021, with a school opening in September of 2023. Because it's a new school on the Mindess site, the demo and abatement would happen at the end of the project. So in essence, we would complete the new school, open that up with a temporary circulation pattern, and then we would demolish the old school, abate it, and replicate those ball fields with another 6 to 9 months, essentially completing in August of 2023. And then next we'll talk about the upcoming near-term schedule implications. So where we are near-term, the next step after tonight's forum is to go back in front of the tri-board to collect the Board of Selectmen and the school committee's vote for recommended approval of this option. From there, the building committee will vote to submit the package to the state by the end of the month, and we'll make that formal submission electronically on May 6th. The MSBA will then vote to agree with the preferred option as presented by the school building committee on June 24th. That'll allow us to then continue on with the detailed design in the month of June and through the summer, culminating in those long-term durations of September 9th submission for schematic design, and then ultimately a town funding vote this fall for scope and budget at the ballot and town meeting. So with that, I know we've provided a lot of information tonight. I'm going to turn it back to Paul for the wrap up and Q&A, and we're here to answer any and all questions.
Thanks, Jeff. So before I solicit any comments or questions, just an idea of what it is that we are doing tonight. So no decisions have been made. The building committee is a recommending body here. So our charge is to lead the town through this process with the state. And so through that process, we have made a recommendation. The recommendation prior to being submitted back to the MSBA is required to have a vote by both the school committee and select board. We're also asking just to, the FinCom to weigh in as well, because I think that's a very important body that we would like to have input on as well. So that's why we're doing it at the tri-board. One thing to note, that's a standard question people have. They look at the cost estimates there. Please understand that the cost estimates are the total project cost. That won't be necessarily what the town's obligation is. So we'll have a better idea of that in the fall. And the reason why that is it's a little bit complicated to determine what the effective percentage is. We know our base rate is 52.26% reimbursement, but we will be planning on getting the additional 2% for the sustainability goals we have. But there's lots of other different caps and different things that come into play. So our effective rate, and basically what an effective rate is, taking the total project cost and how much of that we are paying and how much we're getting reimbursed. We'll have a better idea of what that's going to look like once we actually have more design done, and we're going to understand how those caps and different things affect the reimbursement. With that, I'll first ask any of the committee members whether there's anything they would like to add or share with the community at this point. You can unmute yourself and make any comments or you'd like to. Okay, seeing none there. So at this point, if anyone in the participating would like to make a comment or ask a question, I ask that you use the raise hand feature within Zoom. For those on their computer, if you open the participant pane, it'll be at the bottom. There'll be a button to raise your hand. If you're on a mobile phone, then if you tap the screen and go to more at the bottom right, that is where the raise hand function is. So, and what I will do is I will unmute you and please introduce yourself, and then you can ask your question. So I'm unmuting you, Margie. I clicked it anyway. Are you not able to unmute yourself, Margie? There you go.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize I had to do that. So I'm Margie Gassell, and I'm a member of the Ashland Sustainability Committee. And I applaud all of the efforts that you have taken to develop a net zero or a net zero ready building. But cutting down woodland is just completely antithetical. I think we need to recognize the important value of trees. They serve a variety of functions, and they're a critical natural resource for combating climate change. So I'm wondering if you have taken an inventory of the number and the size of the trees that you would be removing. And I have a second question also. The slide that showed the different options on the site, it was too complicated for me to determine if some of those options might have prevented taking down trees.
So I can answer a couple of those, and then I'll turn it over to Kent or Bill or whoever is appropriate to continue. So there were some other options that had the building seat over in the right-hand corner. Some of the challenges with that was the end result wasn't as workable. It was also that the building now sat a good distance away from where the fields would be. And so that was one of the reasons why it got shifted where it is. And to answer your question about, as we get further along in design, we will be keeping track and minimizing what we do need to cut, and with the intent of not just planting token trees, but also ones that will become mature trees, not just we're not going to do a takedown of a mature tree and then say plant one that's going to be half its size. So we're looking to make sure that we have minimal impact there.
Okay, it was a little hard for me to hear the last bit of what you said. Did you say that you're going to plant mature trees?
So our goal is to make sure that as it relates to things like that, that over time we will be net neutral or net positive. And that being, even if it's a smaller tree now, we'll plant one that will be comparable eventually, and those kind of things. So if we're cutting down a mature tree, the likelihood that we can put, we can't just plant a new mature tree of the same size, but the goal wouldn't be to replace that with a small token tree, but to really, we do care about that, and we want to make sure we're going to be, our goal is to try to be as net neutral there as possible, if not possible.
Okay, but you have to recognize that it will take a lot of years to achieve the same level of carbon sequestration.
Correct. But, when we're making decisions, that is a factor, but certainly we cannot say we can't build a building in the right location that has safety implications and cost implications, and say that we can't do that because of this. So it's a consideration. We do care about it, and we'll do the best we can to minimize it and also replace what we can.
Yep. And this is Kent from Flansburgh, and it's a great comment, and that came up at community forum number 3 when we were looking at kind of location and placement. And so some of the options that were away from the building footprint, one was like tucked around the corner, and there were difficulties with just, I would say, supervision of the overall school and the placement. And this one kind of centralized it more, and part of the compromise was it was inching towards the woods. And so Stimson Landscape Architects, they've been working closely with us. And so the option you see here was kind of a takeaway where we flipped one of the buildings that was going more into the woods, and we're trying to stay off of it. And so as the building designs more, we're hoping to, again, kind of go kind of as far east as we can. But they're, excellent landscape architects. And the goal is anything that, we're taking down, we have put a hefty budget for trees as for this project. And I think as the project develops and we really lock down the design, we'll see the outcome of that. But I appreciate your comment.
Anyone else? Raise your hand. Okay. Matt?
Hi, this is Matt Marshquist, also with the Sustainability Committee. I just wanted to say we've had really good involvement with this process, and I want to thank the team for taking the net zero commitment seriously and making it an integrated part of the project throughout. We did review the recommended systems at our committee meeting last night, and I appreciate Paul coming to answer some questions on that. One of the things that we look at as we're looking forward towards making Ashland net zero, one of the common strategies is electrification of buildings. And this allows us to rely on renewable sourcing of electricity to reduce our emissions over time. Both option 2 and 2B would support this strategy. Our committee would obviously love to see an all electric building with no natural gas. And I think that's the ideal, but with the budget considerations, option 2B is the hybrid system is still a really good option. I think it achieves nearly the same level of energy intensity per square foot as the all electric system. And one of the great things, in my opinion, about the system is that the natural gas is there and it supports peak demand, but it would probably not be used very often. So I just wanted to say, from that discussion, I think we feel good about that baseline option. And hopefully some of the savings there would help to support the addition of solar on the rooftop or on the parking lot.
All right, thanks, Matt. Anyone else? So for anybody, if you are having some issues with the raise your hand feature, our goal is to make sure everyone can participate. So that's how we're going to try to do it initially, and then I'll briefly unmute everyone or give everybody the opportunity to unmute if that's for those that are having issues. So
Paul, this is Yolanda. It looks like Mark Tassoni is raising his hand. He might not be clicking the raise his hand feature.
Right. So I'll get him when I unmute everyone.
Okay.
And he'll still need to unmute himself because the host can't make someone unmute for privacy reasons. But yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to point it out. Thanks.
We'll definitely get him. Thanks. Okay. So no one else is raising their virtual hand. So I'm going to unmute everyone. That gives some people the opportunity. You might be prompted. If you're prompted, you can do that. I just ask that you introduce yourself and ask your questions. So Mark Tassoni, are you able to hear us and talk now?
Yeah, yes, I am here.
How's it going, Mark?
Okay, let me just, how's that?
No, we can hear you fine. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, I'm hearing you. I'm just adjusting the volume on my TV right now.
Okay.
Okay, how's that?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna be asking about the beginnings of this project and knowing how the new high school on East Union was started. How was this being brought up and brushed up to nowadays to the work and to what is going to be compared? Or is the better question, is the Mindess being compared to the new high school, or is going to be a little different from what the new high school is now?
So from a process perspective, Mark, are you talking about how it was funded in the process with the MSBA, or are you talking about the actual design of the building?
Little bit of both.
Okay. So from a process perspective, both were MSBA projects. So they're similar in that they're going through the process. The process has certainly evolved since that time. But it is very similar. Some of the programs that were available then might not be the same programs now. There's different incentives and things like that. So it's still with the MSBA. So it's still that process. But there are differences just in that process over that time period that has changed. As it relates to the building itself, there's not very much going to be similar from a design perspective. We're talking about high schoolers to elementary. A lot of the design concepts we're looking at here in the pod structure are really elementary focused. So you won't see a similar thing a lot of the times for some of the high school. Certainly, there's lessons learned. We have some people on the committee that were involved at some level during that process. So we have learned stuff through that project that we'll be applying here. But aside from that, there's not really too much overlap.
Okay, I got one last question. Does this go with the future enrollment of how many students might fit in 10 years in a 10-year scan?
Yeah. So a couple things about that, Mark. That's an actual excellent question. Particularly if you've seen some of our other slides, you'll notice that our enrollment certification with the MSBA, that's the agreed upon enrollment that gets fed into the space template to determine square footages and things like that, says 695. And if you have been watching any of our other meetings or school committee meetings, you'll know that Mindess is at currently, unless it's changed over the last couple of days, 667. So the obvious question is, hold on a second, we're already above. And I'll tell you, this is something that I asked Mr. Adams quite a little bit. And I can ask him to elaborate, but the answer is yes, Mark. Both the town and the MSBA do enrollment projections, and the MSBA doesn't want us coming back with a space concern in 10 years. That being said, they also, as part of this process, will mandate that we show them how we would expand the academic capacity by 15%. So that'll be part of the design submission to them and telling them how we would expand the building by 15% for academics, should that need arise. So that being said, you know,
Okay, one last question, one last one.
Okay.
I'm going to ask, will the school be technically ready to remote educate in case like this pandemic here that's going on now happens in the future? Can it be ready? Can the school be ready for that?
Oh, that's a good question as well, Mark. I'll tell you that the challenge isn't the building, right, and what we're going through right now. The challenges are most certainly in, you know, how we had to change how we're delivering content so quickly. There's so many challenges with what people have access to and how they can access the content. So I don't think the building, certainly this building is going to be, I guess the term you could use is future ready. It'll obviously be our newest building. It'll have a lot of technology and things like that in it. But as it relates to something similar to what we're going through now, the bigger challenges we're facing now is the fact that our curriculum and everything wasn't designed to be delivered this way, and that all of our students don't have equitable opportunities where they're currently sitting to access that content. So, those are the bigger challenges. So I don't think the building helps or hurts that, but and you know, certainly if Mr. Adams or anyone wants to add to that. But.
No, I think you spot on.
Well, I apologize. This is Yolanda Greaves. I need to jump off for another meeting. Just thanks for what you've done. Thanks to the whole committee. And I look forward to our future discussion with the tri-board and then as the select board takes its vote next week as well. I'll see you all later. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Yolanda.
Good night.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Anyone else would like to ask a question or comment? No one else wants to comment at all. Okay, Preston, you always have something to say, but I guess not tonight. I guess you guys put together a good presentation, answered all the questions. Well, if there is nothing else, then I'd like to thank everyone for attending. You're certainly welcome to reach out to us. Our email is on here. The building project, all the materials are up there. And again, I just want to be clear that this building hasn't been designed yet. This is still at a very high level. It isn't until we get to that point where we're submitting the recommended option that we really start to look at putting some designs together. And we'll have it'll be about what, 25–30% designed in the fall. Is that about right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, with each submission, we refine it a bit, but right now when we submit in May, this is about the level we want to be at. We'll work on some adjacency diagrams, and then we take it into September with kind of the definition of the floor plans and a bit more design. So it's still kind of high level, but it definitely refines to capture the cost.
All right. Well, so if there is nothing else, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn, and then we're going to do a roll call. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Who is that?
Michael.
Mike Tyra seconds.
All right. Paul Kendall, aye.
Jim Adams, aye.
Michael Herbert.
Aye.
Let's see, Michael Tyra.
Aye.
Claudia Bennett.
Aye.
Nick Giovanni.
Aye.
Keaton Joshi.
Aye.
Salat.
Aye.
Michael Kane.
Aye.
That is 9-0. Thank you everyone for joining us. And again, if you need any questions answered, want to provide us any comments, feel free to reach out to the group.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Becca.
Thank you.